Hello, everyone. Originally, I was going to just talk about, I was going to make this as a kind of combination of other microbes, maybe bring in some worms, talk about some other kind of parasitic infections, but and including prions, which was in the chapter you read. But then I decided to make it all about prions because it's an interesting concept, interesting phenomenon, these little guys. So what is a prion? If you read yesterday, hopefully you did. You didn't fake it, copy and paste from Google or something. You know that prions are infectious proteins. And this background here is infectious. I think somebody micrographed this and took a picture of some cells producing these prions. Anyway, so something back here is related to a prion at least. So these infectious proteins, and they are normally produced in human cells. There's a typical prion protein that is produced, and they are produced in mostly in the neurons in the nervous system. But they can be infectious, and they can be transmitted from one person to another person or an animal to a person. But that's really, they're proteins. That's it. One of the macromolecules. It's like a sugar that can destroy you, or a lipid or a fat. I mean, it's kind of incredible when you think about it. But also keep in mind that what are proteins? Proteins do everything. So if you have something that's not working properly and is causing harm, then yeah, you can see where it can quickly get out of control. So prions are found primarily in neurons, and we didn't talk a whole lot about it, but proteins are very sensitive to any kind of change, and genetically, if you change an amino acid, if you change the nucleic acid, you can change the shape of a protein. But prions, you have a normal shape, and then they have an abnormal shape, and these are fairly recently discovered. Recently, I mean like the 70s. And so there's not a whole lot of research out there, a whole lot of information like the other diseases we've talked about. One other side note, I have heard this pronounced prion, but that sounds kind of wussy to me, so I'll call it prion. It just doesn't sound right, prion. Anyway, so what happens is they change shape, and over time they can accumulate into the neuron. And you'll find with these diseases that there typically is a long incubation period, anywhere from 5 to 40 or 50 years. And if you acquire it, these studies aren't, there's not a whole lot of studies on this, but the general thought right now is if you ingest this abnormal protein, they can have the ability to attach to the normal protein and change its shape. So as you're producing this protein, you have these abnormal ones that attach, then change it, and then the next one, you still have more being made, and then this new one that's abnormal will attach to a new one, and so on and so forth. And that can explain some, in part, why there's a long incubation period. But again, who knows? They're not 100% sure. Maybe the abnormal protein somehow causes a mutation. Who knows? But at any rate, what they do know is that over time, you do accumulate these abnormal proteins, and they can cause harm. The most common and popular prion disease is mad cow disease, which was talked about like the late 90s, early 2000s. It was kind of the disease of the year. What happened with mad cow disease, it's also called variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which is, I want to point out, different from the picture over here, which is Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. There's slight differences in it. But with mad cow disease, what had happened is the cows were given food, and in the food was bits and parts of the cows that they couldn't sell. They would just kind of grind it up and put it back in the feed to save some money. And if a cow had the disease, there'd be cow brain in the food, and then the cow would eat it, and then they would get infected. And in the late 90s, early 2000s, you had a lot of farms that were slaughtering their cattle because you get one infected, and who knows how many more are affected because of the incubation period. So then if you were to eat the cattle that had the infected meat, you could also acquire this. So there was a big to-do and hurrah about this back in the 90s and 2000s. I think in the United States it was less of an issue, as there were some cases in England, some cases in Canada. But the incubation period is years. But once it starts, it's pretty rapid, anywhere from a month to 12 months, and you're dead. And there's no cure, there's no treatment, 100% fatal. And you can see the picture here. There's a regular brain, the control, and then a picture of someone with Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease, which I'm just going to use as an example. Just look at the brain deterioration. Right, you're missing this tissue layer here is just completely gone, and what this disease will do is kind of put holes and form holes in the brain, soft tissue area. That's mad cow disease. Now, if you a variant of this that's no longer out there, because it just it blows my mind that people do these things, but they do, is Kuru. So Kuru was a same thing, degenerative brain disorder caused by a prion, because some people decided that, hey, let's eat brain. So the public service announcement, if you're a cannibal, don't eat brains. So what happened, you have this prion, you eat it, and you have the disorder. So it's up to a 40-year or so incubation period for Kuru, and it would cause, Kuru is means, I think, like shaking, because this particular version of it would cause you to have convulsions and shake, and eventually the brain gets disordered and you die. Confusion. It's just any kind of dementia kind of disease. The last known case of Kuru died in 2009. Again, if you do the math, you're like, wait, what? That was happening in the 50s, 60s? What's going on there? Supposedly, so not a problem anymore, but, that just blows my mind that people would eat brain. Oh well. But what really got me going on this lesson today was a disease I wanted to talk about, but it was genetic. So this is a genetic form of a prion disease. And it wasn't until today that I realized that it was a prion disease. That was just a genetic disorder. But it's kind of insane when it does. It's called fatal familial insomnia. So it's a dominant disorder. It's a genetic dominant disorder. And since this prion is a protein, we can trace it back to the genetics. So you would figure that there could be some genetic disorders associated with this protein, and there certainly is. So fatal familial insomnia, again, it's progressive, and I don't know what the thought is, and there's not many cases of this, but this is a prion disease, and it accumulates and builds up in the thalamus. And the thalamus has many functions, and one of the functions is controlling your sleep-wake cycle. What happens over time, I guess, again, they're accumulating in the brain, and you get this progressive insomnia. And it starts, I think the average age is around 50, but it can be anywhere from 30 to 50. There's not enough cases to really kind of define an average. So there's a broad range. But what will happen is you have a little bit of insomnia. Insomnia is, for those who don't know, means you don't sleep well, can't sleep, hence the picture here. So you have a few sleepless nights, and over a course of months, 6 months to a year, you sleep less and less. Your brain just can't sleep. And eventually, you're not sleeping, and ultimately you die because you can't sleep. But again, it's a progressive brain disorder. I don't know if they've had brain studies, but it's pretty crazy to think about. You just don't sleep, and your body can't sleep even though you want to, and you end up dying because of this. All right. Yeah, just noticed I had misspelled thalamus. I was probably thinking of thymus. My goodness. All right. So that's fatal familial insomnia. The thalamus is controlling your sleep and wakefulness. So really, it prevents your deep sleep. The deep sleep. So the thalamus is relaying the information from different areas of the brain. And it is controlling your wakefulness and really the deep sleep and REM It's kind of where it works. But anyway, as these proteins accumulate, you can't sleep anymore, and you die. 100% fatal, as far as I know. And that's prions. They're pretty crazy. Just a little protein, and really hard to cure because you can't have any medicines that attack proteins that aren't going to hurt other proteins. So I don't know. There's very few cases. So if you're worried about getting this, there's very few cases of any of these diseases per year. Odds of you getting this are very low. I think it's like 1 in a million or something, maybe more. Anyway, enjoy your day. Hope you were excited about these diseases as I was. So, it's pretty amazing stuff out there. See ya.